When it comes to werewolf movies, honestly, my response is usually, meh. This is my 6th Halloween movie review feature. A lot of people thought after Dracula and Frankenstein, werewolves would be next, because, after all, you have Dracula, you got Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman, right? Well, the reason that it took so long to get to this is I'm not really into most werewolf movies, so it was hard to get excited about a feature like this. But one movie kind of takes everything that I don't like about the genre and tears it to shreds in an orgy of awesomeness. That movie is The Howling. The Howling starts off with Karen, a TV reporter played by Dee Wallace, investigating a serial rapist and murderer by contacting the man through the channels he usually finds his victims with and agreeing to meet him, though being tracked by the police. They lose her signal due to interference, however, so she's in real danger, especially since the killer and rapist is actually a werewolf. You don't see him turn into one, but you hear his voice change, and, well, it's a werewolf movie, so it's not hard to figure out. The police intervene just in time and seemingly shoot the guy to death, ending the ordeal, but it takes more than ordinary bullets to permanently kill a werewolf, at least in this version of the mythos. Karen is shaken by this and sees a psychiatrist who was also the one who trained her on how to talk to the psycho. He has her come out to a retreat in the woods to get away from it all, promising an idyllic country resort where she can have peace and quiet. So her and her husband go out there, but instead they find it's more of a party retreat for his disturbed patients, who get up to a lot of drinking, hunting, and sex. Well, nothing wrong with that so far, right? However, as the investigation goes on, her fellow reporters start to think that the killer might have at least thought he was a werewolf, or at least something seriously fishy is going on, especially when his body turns up missing. This is where you'd expect him to follow her to the retreat and finish the job, right? Well, yeah, but the psychiatrist and all of the patients are also werewolves as well, and they're trying to bring Karen and her husband into their society. They infect the husband, who has freaky werewolf sex with this other girl, but when Karen's co-workers start snooping around the retreat looking for clues as to the whereabouts of the missing killer, or at least his body, they're smart enough to come armed with silver bullets and try to rescue Karen, and everybody turns into a werewolf, and there's this great showdown. Well, now that's the bare bones plot, but there's a lot more going on. The werewolves in this movie aren't regular people that are plagued by a dark curse that turns them into an animalistic creature of evil under the full moon. They're shapeshifters who can turn into the wolf anytime they want and keep their minds intact. The psychiatrist is trying to lead them to a peaceful coexistence with mankind, living in the country and feeding off of cattle. But some of them disagree and think humans are the cattle that they should be feeding off of. In some ways, it's partly a horror movie, but it also has that behind-the-scenes conspiracy theory you see in a lot of fantastical works. It's a lot like the movie Blade, which I think had to have been inspired by The Howling as well as the comic that it got its name from. In that movie, it was vampires, but it had a similar idea of a secret society that lived apart from humans, and the internal struggle about whether to coexist or to dominate. One thing that I absolutely have to talk about is the special effects. They're fucking amazing. The transformation sequences are done with all practical effects, and they still look good today. And they're often done with no cutaways or editing tricks. Just great use of prosthetics and puppetry. I do have to say that sometimes it seems like they were a bit masturbatory with it all. In the scene in the beginning where the serial killer changes, it's done off-camera, but it seems to happen in a flash. But every transformation that is shown up in close in gruesome detail, and it seems to go on and on. It takes several minutes to turn into a werewolf, and the human characters just kind of hang around while the transformation is happening. I would have let this go just once for the fact of showing off the effects, but it does this every single time, and there are a lot of transformations. As much as I like the special effects, they didn't need to show the super elaborate sequence every time, especially since the film has loads of werewolves in it. That being said, this is a classic that also spawned a series of sequels, though only the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th movies were released in theaters. The 4th, 6th, 7th, and 8th went straight to video. I'd recommend at least seeing the first 3. It makes a pretty good trilogy before they started milking it. This is one of the best werewolf movies out there, but it is only slightly marred by too many long shots of transformations that seem to be just showing off the effects, which I have to admit are still very impressive. So I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10.